Whatever your mind feeds upon, your mind attracts to you. There is a war happening inside you, not the kind fought with swords or armies, but with comparisons, distractions, and the silent pull of a world that keeps trying to make you forget who you are. It starts the moment you open your eyes. Before your feet touch the floor, the world is already shouting at you, telling you who to be, what to want, who to envy, where to look, what you're missing. And most people, they never question it. They scroll, they compare, they consume, they conform. But not you, because deep inside, you know something is off. You feel it, that hollow echo after chasing someone else's success, that silent anxiety after trying to measure up to a standard that was never yours. And it's not because you're weak, it's because you've been pulled so far into the noise that you've forgotten the signal. That signal is you. Napoleon Hill said, "You have absolute control over just one thing, your thoughts." But most people give that control away before they even finish their morning coffee. They give it to headlines, to social media likes, to the opinions of people who have never built anything, to the envy of someone else's highlight reel. And here's the brutal truth. As long as your eyes are on others, your destiny is blurry, because you cannot run your race looking sideways. You will trip, you will stall, you will lose yourself chasing someone else's finish line. There is no fulfillment in being a carbon copy. Your power begins the moment you stop measuring your life by what they're doing and start measuring it by who you're becoming. This is the first step into your own greatness. Focus, not just any focus, obsessive, relentless, internal focus, the kind of focus that silences the world so you can hear your own voice again. The kind of focus that stares into the mirror and says, "Let's build something no one can copy because it was never meant to be duplicated." You see, the truly great, the ones who bend reality, who write history, they didn't do it by keeping up. They did it by going in. Edison didn't care what others were inventing. Ford didn't wait for permission to imagine cars for the masses. Disney wasn't checking trends before building magic. And Hill himself didn't write Think and Grow Rich to fit in. He wrote it to wake the world up. They all understood one thing: distraction is the enemy of destiny, and comparison, it's a cancer to your confidence. Every minute you spend watching someone else's path is a minute stolen from paving your own. Every second you envy what they have is a second you delay becoming who you were meant to be. But here's where it turns. You don't need to keep up. You need to shut down the noise. And when you do, you begin to rebuild something the world can't touch: your mindset. This is the soil, the foundation, the battleground, because everything begins in the mind. Napoleon Hill knew it. Every titan of success lived by it. What you plant in your mind, you will harvest in your life. And if you're planting weeds, comparisons, doubts, distractions, then don't be surprised when your soul feels overgrown with anxiety and envy. But if you start planting vision, belief, gratitude, clarity, and purpose, something else grows, something rare, something powerful, something the world can't copy. So plant wisely, and once you've reclaimed your mind, the next war begins: belief. Not belief in what you see, but belief in what you can't yet prove. Belief in the invisible seed of who you are becoming, because you don't see an oak tree when you look at an acorn, but it's in there. And you don't see your full potential in the mirror right now, but it's there, buried under years of distraction, fear, and watching others live their lives louder than your own. Belief is the antidote. It is not soft. It is not passive. It is the fire the world can't put out. Belief says, even if no one claps, I'm still building. Belief says, even if I fall 10 times, I'll rise 11. Belief says, what they're doing doesn't matter. I'm too busy becoming. Because the moment you anchor yourself in belief, You stop drifting with the tides of other people's opinions. You stop adjusting your dream to make others comfortable. You stop shrinking to fit places you've outgrown. And in that silence, the silence of not needing their applause, clarity rises. Clarity is rare. In a world addicted to noise, to hype, to chasing 10 things at once, clarity is rebellion. It's the rebel that says, no, I don't want what they have. I want what was designed for me. And you don't find clarity by asking the world for it. You find it by going dark long enough to hear your soul speak. It might whisper at first, but if you listen, it grows louder. Clarity tells you what to cut, what to say no to, what to walk away from, what to pursue with blood and sweat and unshakable resolve. And once you have clarity, you don't need motivation. You don't need hype. You don't need anyone to understand. Because now you have vision. Vision is sacred. It's not a dream board. It's not a hashtag. It's the blueprint of the person you were born to become. It pulls you forward when everything says stop. It wakes you up when the world says sleep. It sharpens your decisions, slices through distractions, and says, focus on the only thing that matters right now, your next right step. Because when vision burns in your chest, their opinions lose their power. Their speed doesn't matter. Their journey doesn't apply. You're not chasing, you're creating. And creation demands sacrifice. If you want to build something eternal, something original, something unshakably yours, you're going to have to let go of fitting in. You're going to have to stop asking for consensus and start building in silence. You're going to have to leave the pack and trust your process. Because while they're comparing, you're transforming. While they're chasing trends, you're mastering timeless principles. While they're performing for the crowd, you're rehearsing for the moment the world can no longer ignore what you've become. And when that moment arrives, when your name begins to echo in places you've never stepped foot, when the world finally looks up from their endless comparisons and asks, where did you come from? You'll smile, because you'll know you didn't come from them. You came from focus, from discipline, from the silence of doing the work when no one was watching. You came from the dark. But you didn't stay there. You became the light. And that light, your light, was forged in the furnace of purpose. Purpose is not a trend. It's not a buzzword. It's not a morning affirmation whispered into a mirror. Purpose is war. It is the reason you rise when everything in you says quit. It is the why beneath the blood. It is the fuel that carries you across deserts, through storms, and into valleys where others gave up. Napoleon Hill said, definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Not wishful thinking, not vague ambition. Definiteness. And you don't find purpose in what others are doing. You don't discover it in likes, in shares, in borrowed goals. You find it in the stillness, in that sacred space between distraction and destiny, in the voice that says, this is the mountain I must climb, even if no one follows, even if no one understands. Because purpose isn't for sale. It's not up for debate. It is the divine contract between your soul and the life you're here to live. And once you sign that contract with conviction, you must protect it with discipline. Discipline is your sword. Discipline is what separates the talkers from the builders, the starters from the finishers, the dreamers from the doers. It is what you do after the motivation dies, when the crowd leaves, when your name isn't trending, and you're left with nothing but the decision to keep going. Discipline is doing the right thing long enough that it becomes the only thing. It's the early mornings no one sees, the late nights no one thanks you for, the reps, the revisions, the sacrifices. It's choosing your goal over your comfort, your future over your feelings, your purpose over popularity. And if you don't have discipline, someone else's noise will rule your life. Because fear doesn't need to be loud to be effective. All it needs is your distraction. Fear will dress itself up in comparison, It will wear the mask of not enough. It will whisper, "Look at them. They're ahead of you. They're better. They're younger. They're smarter. They have more." But fear only wins when you listen. The disciplined don't listen to fear. They respond with action, because action kills doubt. Action kills envy. Action kills excuses. The moment you start moving, the spell breaks. The fog lifts. The voice of fear fades beneath the thunder of your own footsteps, and in those footsteps, you begin to build momentum. Momentum is what makes the impossible inevitable, not because the path gets easier, but because you get stronger. And the stronger you get, the quieter the world becomes. Because now, you're too busy executing to entertain comparison, too focused on building to worry about watching, too consumed with becoming to care about competing. The ones who change the world don't compete. They create. They walk in rooms and shift the atmosphere, not because they're louder, but because they're aligned. They are aligned with their purpose, their vision, their actions, their identity, and alignment breeds clarity. Clarity births confidence. Confidence sustains commitment, and commitment, fierce, unshakable commitment, is what turns time into legacy. But you won't find commitment by looking around. You find it by looking within and never looking away. You build it by choosing forward motion even when the path is uphill. You sustain it by refusing to get lost in the highlight reels of others and instead doubling down on the real. Your real. Because the real wins in the end. Not the polished, not the popular, not the viral. The real. The ones who didn't quit when no one was watching. The ones who showed up day after day and planted seeds in private. The ones who stayed rooted when the storms came and bloomed when the timing was divine. And that is what you're doing. You are planting something eternal, not to impress, but to impact, not to mimic, but to master, not to follow, but to lead. And leaders, real leaders, don't obsess over others. They obsess over alignment, integrity, excellence. They don't copy the playbook. They become the playbook. And when the world looks at them and asks, "How did you do it?" they won't have a formula. They'll have a fire born from the decision to focus on what they could control, their mindset, their effort, their character, their vision, and to let the rest fade into silence. And now it's your turn to go quiet. Not because you're losing, but because you're building. Your turn to stop watching and start creating. Your turn to shut the world out and let your soul speak. Not someday. Now. Now is the moment the shift happens. Not out there. In here. In the stillness between breaths. In the space between the noise they throw at you and the voice rising inside you saying, "Enough. Enough comparing. Enough waiting. Enough shrinking. Enough wishing. Enough watching others eat while your dream starves in the corner of your mind." You weren't born to applaud. You were born to build. You weren't made to scroll through someone else's life. You were created to write your own in fire across the sky of this century. And you do it with one decision. Focus. Focus so deep that distractions die from neglect. Focus so clear that envy burns in its own irrelevance. Focus so intense that the world bends around your will and not the other way around. This isn't selfish. This is sacred. Because when you focus on yourself, truly focus, you become someone worth following, not by imitation, but by inspiration. You give others permission to rise when you rise. You show them what's possible when one person dares to look inward instead of outward. You become the proof that focus, not followers, builds empires. Let the world keep chasing each other's shadows. Let them compare, mimic, and spiral in the endless loop of not enough. But you rise different. You rise grounded, not grasping, rooted, not restless, built on vision, not validation. And that difference is everything. Because here's what they never tell you. The loudest life is rarely the fullest, and the most admired path is often the most abandoned one, walked not by the brave but by the desperate. But the fulfilled, the fearless, they walk paths only they can see, and those paths are paved in silence, solitude, sweat, and soul. You don't need their map. You are the map. You don't need their permission. You are the authority. You don't need their approval. You are the evidence. And you don't need to be louder. You need to be laser focused, laser driven, laser aligned. Because energy spread thin is wasted. But energy concentrated is divine. When you take all the attention you've given to what they're doing and turn it inward, mountains move. Not overnight, not without resistance, but inevitably, because nothing is more dangerous than a human being who is finally done being distracted. Nothing is more powerful than the one who decides to live on purpose, no matter who's watching, applauding, or doubting. And nothing is more unstoppable than the soul that has made peace with walking alone for a season, so they can rise above for a lifetime. That's you now, a soul reborn in silence, a mind renewed by clarity, a life realigned with greatness. So the next time you feel the pull, to compare, to compete, to drift into their noise, remember, that's not your race. That's not your lane. That's not your legacy. Your legacy is being written now, in the dark, in the discipline, in the decision to rise. So rise. And when they ask where you went, tell them the truth. You stopped watching others. You started watching yourself, and you've never looked back.